William from Calgary. Do you have any details about the Hulk Hogan Richard Belzer incident that took place before WrestleMania 1? And what was the aftermath? Well, Richard Belzer had a TV talk show at the time. I don't remember the name of it. And he had Hogan and Mr. T on to promote WrestleMania. This was only a few days before the show. And Belzer was a comedian. He was an actor and a comedian. He would make jokes. But he clearly was not a fan. He was poking fun at them, and he wanted Hulk to demonstrate a move on him. Mr. T actually had enough sense to say no, and Belzer just kept insisting on it. So Hulk got up to go do it. And Hulk chose the simplest move that he could think of, which was a front chin lock. And he cinched up on it, and Belzer went, like within seconds, Belzer went out. His body went limp. Where Hulk fucked up was that he let him go. He let him slip out of his grip, and Belzer just dropped to the floor. He was dead weight, and he smacked the back of his head on the floor, split his head open, and he needed 9 stitches to close the wound. Hulk should have known enough to set him down gently when he realized that the guy was dead weight. And you could even see the puddle of blood on the ground when he finally came to. Like, Hulk's smacking him around, and he finally comes to. Hulk helps him up. And then Hogan sees the blood dripping down the back of his suit jacket, and he didn't know what to do. And Belzer, he popped right back up and said, "We'll be right back." And he pitched it to a commercial, but he was on Dream Street, like he was on autopilot. I'm not saying Hulk did it to him on purpose, but back then, wrestlers were very protective of the business. This was not long after the incident where David Schultz slapped John Stossel in the ear twice. When Stossel told him to his face that he thought wrestling was fake, right? Then, well, he's got to prove to him that I'll show you how fake it is. And so he got smacked. It's John Stossel, so I can understand it. When they came back from break, though, on the show here, Hulk and T, they were there. Belzer was not there. And there was some guy, he was like the producer, maybe he was the executive producer of the show, explaining that Richard had left. He had gone to the hospital. And Hulk apologized for what happened. He looked shell-shocked by the whole thing, probably because he knew he was going to get sued. But he's like, he apologized for what happened, and it was funny because he made some comment to the effect of, I didn't realize that this man did no physical training or like physical activity of any kind. And everybody in the audience laughed. And Hogan was like, "No, I'm not trying to be smart. I'm just, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be smart. I'm just saying, because Belzer was, he was like a skinny nothing. And Hogan was just this monster of a man. And so anyway, he apologized and said, this is why, we tell people don't do this at home. But I'm sure he was worried about getting sued. And he was. Belzer sued him for $5 million. They ended up settling out of court before it went to trial. And Belzer ended up buying a house in France with the money that he got from the lawsuit. Belzer died in that house last year. When he passed away, it was in that house in France. It was the house that Hogan paid for. That was the most expensive front chin lock ever applied. Sufi from Malaysia. Do you know any reason why WWE has not done a PLE in Madison Square Garden? Currently, they only do TV and house shows there. Also, could you see AEW holding a show in MSG anytime soon? No, I don't see AEW running Madison Square Garden anytime soon. They have enough trouble filling buildings half the size of Madison Square Garden. They're not running the Garden. WWE doesn't run there very often because it's very expensive to do so. I think it's the same reason they run Allstate and not the United Center whenever they go to Chicago. Yeah, it's like, why spend the extra money for the Garden when they can just run the Barclays Center in Brooklyn? It's not that far away. But they have not, believe it or not, they have not run a pay-per-view at Madison Square Garden since Survivor Series in 2011. That's 13 years. Comes down to cost. To me, MSG lost a lot of its charm when they renovated and they got rid of that short aisleway. It had its own personality, and then they got rid of it, I've heard Bruce Pritchard say that he hated the way it looked there because it was always so busy in the background with people walking around that made the show seem uninteresting. I disagree. I thought it gave the show's personality. Without it, it just looks like every other arena now. But it comes down to money. It's not that they can't afford it with all the money they make now. But again, why run the Garden when you could just run Barclays for cheaper? Jesse from Johannesburg, South Africa. Bleacher Report dropped their top 25, it's actually top 50, best WWE theme songs of all time. I wanted to ask for your thoughts and if you had a top 5 WWE theme songs ever. Their top 5 were Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Undertaker, who's had 1,000 different theme songs, and most of them great, but he's had so many of them. Chris Jericho, Randy Savage, and Edge with Metalingus by Alter Bridge. All fine choices. I have said in the past many times that Real American is my favorite wrestling theme of all time. It's crazy to think it wasn't even intended for Hogan. I just love the song. So that's my number 1. If I had to round out my top 5, I would have Shawn Michaels. I would have Bret Hart. I would have Demolition. And I would have Hollywood Rock. I think in no particular order, I think that would round out my top 5. But there are plenty of theme songs I love that I would consider for a spot there. I mean, I loved DDP's Nirvana knockoff theme in WCW, Kane's original theme, and his Slow Chemical theme, too. I thought that was badass. Undertaker's themes, of course, those were great. Cody's theme, Kingdom, is a great song.